All right, Little Rock, grab your coffee or your favorite Trios entree and get ready for another episode of the Block Talk podcast. I'm Jamie Taylor, your host, and I'm welcoming this week Capi Peck.
So glad to be here, Jamie.
I'm so thankful to have you, and you are the owner of our beloved Trios.
Yes, and we just celebrated our 34th birthday this Monday.
See, 1985 was a great year. Me, Trios, we were both born.
And we're still there, same location, still going strong in a different manner than we thought we would be. No dine-in yet. It's a little surreal, but we're hanging in there.
Well, and so similar to how we are right now, everything is set up in a more social distance situation than it before COVID, I guess. We're going to call things pre-COVID and post-COVID. And I remember a little over 6 months ago, I was still pregnant and I was kind of on the verge of, here we go. There's this global health pandemic. It's shifting the businesses, not just around my city, but my state, my country, my world. Everything is changing. I can't imagine what that was like for you.
Pretty surreal.
Yeah.
Well, I think we had an advantage at Trios because I have a sister who I'm very close to who lives in New York City. And so we talk almost daily, and back, I guess, in February, she lives outside of New Rochelle, which was the epicenter back in February. And she kept telling me, it's going to move your way. This is what restaurants are doing. These are what bars are doing. This you need to start thinking about this. So I did start thinking about it. I didn't really know how I was going to actually respond until early March when we decided to close our dining room about a week before everybody else did in the city. Some people thought we were crazy, but we did it for our safety and the safety of our patrons, and we morphed not seamlessly, but very quickly into curbside pickup and home delivery. It was a business model we had never even fathomed that we would be doing. We switched to, or we added online ordering, something we had never explored before. So all of a sudden there were all these platforms that we'd have to update because we change our menu so often, and our servers became car hops and delivery people. We have, I think before the pandemic, we had about 45 staff, a lot of those part-time, college kids, high school kids. We currently have 32. On day one, we took those people that made only $2.63 an hour because they were tipped individuals, raised everybody to $10 an hour, plus a tip pool. I really was cognizant of the fact that our most vulnerable, people needed our help.
Right.
And it was a bumpy first week or two because one, we had no idea we would do the volume of business we would do with a closed dining room, but just figuring out where people were going to park, how we were going to package everything. Some things travel well, some don't. People were wanting family packs of food, and so there were just all sorts of things that we had never really done in that manner, but we had but we had an advantage because I had been thinking about what this might look like before we did it. And also the fact that we cater, we have delivery vans, we have the equipment, we're used to doing family meals, big meals. We know how to pack. We know about packaging, and never during all of this did we say, oh well, this is too expensive, we're going to go back to styrofoam. We were still doing everything green, recycling our glass, using biodegradable containers, no plastic, all paper. We made that commitment, we stuck with it. And we had some weekends especially that were close to what we would do during normal business operations. That's changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Now more restaurants are opening, and that's the big question. When will we open our dining room?
Right. Well, it's really, there was so much in what you just said, because you're an entrepreneur clearly by nature, and you've opened this restaurant, operated it for all these years, and then you get hit with this global pandemic. Yes, you're thinking ahead about it, but all of a sudden you're faced with a million different pivot points. It's not just the pivot point of, okay, now we're curbside and delivery. It's also the packaging, the food traveling, all of those things.
Right.
Ironically, we had just done an episode a week before with a a restaurant owner here, and we had talked about how they just were not interested in doing anything curbside, and then boom, you had to. It became survival.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I admire what you've had to deal with. Your industry hit among the hardest, I guess, amongst all of the industries that have been hit.
You know, we were the first industry to close down, and we'll probably be the last industry to really fully open up. And even when we do open up, I think hospitality, especially bars and restaurants, that landscape's going to be changed forever. This is not going away.
Right.
You know, we have the flu season in front of us. We're looking at spikes now, and I just was listening to NPR in the UK. They'd gotten things under control, and now things are not because people travel to different countries for vacation, and a lot of the young people are not taking social distancing and masks seriously, so they're seeing a big spike and looking at maybe closing restaurants and bars again. So it's just not anything that I ever thought I would have to consider or learn how to navigate in the last 34 years, but we're making it work.
Well,
you know, I don't know how long we can sustain this. We're all anxiously waiting for Congress to act on this Restaurants Act of 2020 that would give relief to the small independent restaurants. First time around, those monies went primarily to large chains, corporate restaurants, franchises. Independent restaurants only got 9%. And we're the lifeblood of the community, in case you didn't know. You know, local.
Well, every restaurant I eat at, there's very few chains. I mean, if you really think about it, especially in Little Rock, because you led to a point there. One of the reasons why we love this show, or why we created this show, is to talk about the value that's here in Little Rock.
Yes.
One of the most valuable pieces of our economy here is that everybody owns their small business, and it operates within so much support for one another. So when it first hit, I mean, people were all over Facebook. They were buying each other gift cards, sending each other meals. We've been catering realtor open houses through all the different restaurants around town. Anything we can do to support that. So I think it's important too for people that don't know, Little Rock is your food community. We love our restaurants and restaurants owners.
Oh, and that's so apparent. And that was apparent from day one for us. About less than 2 weeks into this, I got a phone call from a very regular customer. He and his wife live right around the corner from Trios and dine in there 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
They're both recently retired, and he wanted to help out. And he said, he knows where I live, and he said, I'm going to bring something over to you. And I said, well, I'm getting ready to leave. Just put it in the mailbox. He said, it's just something that I think will help you out. So I was expecting him to, buy some gift cards or $100. He had written me a check for $10,000.
Oh my goodness, how generous.
So generous. So we've had not lots of situations like that, but buying gift cards and this whole effort to make sure we're taking care of local boutiques and nurseries and liquor stores and restaurants and food trucks. I mean, all the local scene. But, it was so surreal when he did that. I actually dropped my knees there at the mailbox and just started crying. And he said, I want to be anonymous, but you all are our family. We care about you. We know this is going to be tough. And do what you think you need to do with this money. So immediately, I'm not even thinking about the survival of the restaurant. Go to the bank, cash that check, and I put it in the hands of my employees. All of it, And I know who's most vulnerable. I didn't do it in a exactly democratic way and divide up the pie, but I knew who was struggling. I knew who the single moms were. I knew who needed it the most, and they were just floored.
Yeah.
And there have been other instances like that, gift cards and just that will never even be redeemed. That they just want to show us the love and support because, restaurants are such a big part of this community, and we're such a generous industry. When you go to any charitable event, you see restaurants, feeding people and giving food away, and now we are on the receiving end, and it's really been one of the most humbling, heartwarming experiences to see how much people love us.
Yeah. I'm kind of over here in my head, I'm hearing like our executive producer replay his words in my head. He's like, Jamie, you're just like, you're going to love Capi. She has this heart. And I'm like, in my head, it's replaying right now because I'm thinking that has been my joy in this time, has been watching through the pivot, all of the positive that has come, because everything you've highlighted so far, and everyone has a different perspective. Not everybody has the same view of this. They're frustrated, they're angry, and there is a lot of anger and frustration in so many different areas in our our culture right now. I understand that, but it is nice when you get to hear that other side of it, and you get to look at, yes, there are people helping their employees. There are people turning around to the restaurant industry and saying, hey, look, all these years that people have been kind of a jerk at a restaurant, like think twice about that all of a sudden when they can't go out and have a meal the same way they used to, or if at all at their favorite restaurant, you're kind of taking that for granted, and you're being thankful for those people who serve you when you're in that capacity.
It's really in a big way kind of renewed my faith in humanity. Now there's still some ugliness out there of people that are just not going to put their mask on, and they're just belligerent because they can't come into the dining room, and these kind of naysayers and deniers, but that's such a small fraction of what I see. And I think my role, not just as the owner of Trios, but as someone who has been around in this community for a long time, not just as city director, but as a leader in my industry, is to set an example for other restaurants.
Right.
And I really wear my cheerleading hat a lot and put on that game face and ooze positivity, because we are a resilient industry, and we will get through this. But I just, we're a real tight-knit group. Back in the beginning of the pandemic, I don't know if you saw, but there were so many restaurants that we were taking care of each other.
Yeah.
Like Scott McGee's my neighbor. He lives right down the street from me. So he saw us working our butts off, and he brought lunch over for our staff. And so then we took spinach dip to the Yellow Rocket restaurants. And then, working with the pantry. We all just feeding each other. We're in there cooking anyway, but sometimes you get tired of chicken salad or chicken enchiladas.
Yeah.
So it's just to see us all come together, whether it was feeding first responders. We did a lot of meals at fire stations. One thing I'm very proud of, I had someone reach out to me very early on when a couple of restaurants refused to deliver food to the Briarwood nursing home. And I happened to have friends, parents who lived there. People were afraid. They didn't understand that you could very safely deliver. And actually, it's my colleague, Dr. Dean Compuris, who's been my mentor through all of this. Okay, Dean, should I open? Should I close? What should I do? And he said, can you help me feed the people, the staff, not the residents, but the staff of Briarwood? These people will not deliver them food. So I put the word out. I started sort of a meal train with other restaurants, and we just came together and made it happen.
Yeah, I love that story, because it's actually interesting. I was representing the client of a real estate business here in town as well, and I was representing a client who was the pharmacist for that particular nursing home, and they were saying just how different the whole dynamic had become, and people were so scared, and still, you're dealing with, like you had mentioned, there are so many people with so many different views and so many opinions, and a lot of that conflict kind of comes up, and to just take a little piece of joy and deliver it somewhere it needs to just brings so much to a community that really needs it at the time. And so it's good that you're trying to provide that leadership to your colleagues and to the community so that people can see it and do it in a constructive, positive way, because like we were talking about, there's so much more joy. And you also mentioned being a city director. That's gotta be one of those places where you have to constantly look for the good, look for the positivity, and help drive towards a solution that works for everyone in a positive way.
Exactly. And they I don't think they make fun of me, but I always try to comment during our board meetings, no matter how scary or negative or bleak things look, on something good that's happening, whether it's we're getting ready to pump $2.5 million into several parks that are south of 630. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday.
And yeah.
Crump Park, one of the oldest, most beloved parks in the South End, is going to get a splash pad for the kids. There's still all sorts of good things going on. And not that I am living in some kind of Pollyanna world and looking through the world with rose-colored lens. I see the ugliness. I'm scared too, but I always try to bring up something positive, because we have to.
Yeah, there has to be balance in it. And I think what, the whole idea of leadership, and for us, the podcast, the idea of Block Talk, right, is to add value to the time that you spend listening to the show, right? So we want people to hear and listen for that positivity and the hope and the drive and the continuance through your entrepreneurial journey, because at the end of the day, this whole community is really thriving with small businesses.
Yes.
You're driving by, I'm driving the other day, and I see Abby outside of Abby's Teas and Things. things. And then I see Muggs, who expands from Argenta over to the Heights. And I
Right.
see all this community stuff taking place. And I love these people. And so many restaurant owners have been on the show, and we've talked about their journey. And it's just, how do you keep them positive, though? I mean, how do you, as a business owner, do you go to your staff and do you say, hey, let's get together, let's talk about all the good things? Do you send out weekly emails? How do you keep the morale up? How do you drive them through this?
Being a one-unit person, I'm a little bit different than somebody like Scott that's got multiple restaurants. I have such a intimate relationship with my staff. I think the last time I counted, there were 10 or 11 people that have 25 plus years there. People come and then they just don't leave, and it's because we treat them like family. And I learned that from my grandparents. My grandparents had a beloved hotel here. It's called the Capi Peck Hotel. It's at 5th and Gaines. I grew up in that hotel, and I understood how important it was to treat staff like family. And so I'm there 5 or 6 days a week. We're closed on Sundays. I think I may never serve Sunday brunch again. I really like having one day off. So we decided during the pandemic that we'd have a rest day on Sunday, and that may be permanent. But so I'm there all of the time. We've had 3 employees test positive during this time. One was very sick but recovered. We took a position that we were going to be very transparent about that early on. We closed the restaurant for 12 days. We didn't need to close for that long. But again, I'm talking to Dean Compuris, and he's telling me what to do, and I'm saying, yes, Dean, you're a doctor, you get the science. I just sling hash. And we had all of our staff tested. We then did a very deep cleaning, and we were all sitting around for 12 days twiddling our thumbs. Nobody else was positive, but we took meals almost daily to the husband and wife that were positive. And we just waited, and we were very transparent about it on social media, and people appreciated that.
Yeah.
Another thing that kept us afloat is during that time, and since the beginning, we were part of the World Central Kitchen delivery team. So we were taking meals to Wrightsville and Sweet Home and various locations. We usually went out to the Sweet Home Wrightsville area, and our staff was actually paid to do that. So that was a way for us to be able to get income to our staff. And the service that they provided was just, they were so touched by it. It's something that not a lot of people think about, is food insecurity.
Oh, there's so much of it.
It's just it's tragic. 1 in 5 people in the state of Arkansas are food insecure.
Well, I'm glad that you touched on that, because one of the things is we have all these amazing local restaurants, and that's a big part of what you guys do. Is you have always been a piece of providing food to people who are food insecure. And we do. I've talked about it on the show before. We are an agricultural state with one of the highest poverty rates when it comes to food. We're so food insecure, especially children. And so we're working on that problem. Heifer International is actually headquartered here. We've got some solutions that we can kind of put in play, but one of the main things is our Arkansas Food Bank and these local restaurants coming together and providing this service to communities in need. So, definitely the community is grateful for that, but I think people forget that when they think about their local restaurant, they're thinking about their experience.
Right.
And we're selfishly, that's just how we are. We go to a restaurant, we want to be served, and we want to eat our meal, and then we want to leave, and we forget that there's all these inner workings, and there's a family of staff back there, counting on our patronage.
Yeah. One of the most impactful things that happened during the pandemic, I guess this was in the early summer, and we were having we got a grant to create not meals, but these Go Fresh boxes that were full of high quality dairy and produce, not something that was, getting ready to expire or wilted lettuce, but good produce that I'd be happy to take home and prepare at my house or in the restaurant. And so we were distributing these out at Asheron University, and I'm bilingual, so I do a lot of work in the Latinx community, and we were distributing these. They would drive through and asking how many members were in their family and loading them up with fresh produce and dairy products. And I saw 2 of my employees in line to pick it up. And I almost lost it. And I didn't have a conversation with them right then and there. But the next day when they were at Trios, I said, do you all need something? Do you need an advance? Do you need some food? How can I help?
Right.
She said, we know we've got 4 kids and we're trying to make ends meet. And I said, this is not necessary for you to be in this line. Please come to me and let me help you.
Right.
But it just blew me away to
Yeah.
see 2 of my staff in that line.
People don't understand, I don't think, that it's so close to your heart when it's a small business, especially one that you've poured your heart into for 34 years. I mean, I'm very young, but that's a long time. And
I was a child when I started Trios.
well, and that's the thing is, I feel like, with my own business, it's a little bit different in our industry because we haven't taken the hit and we have independent contractors. It's a little bit different. They're not staff, but you don't know what anyone's dealing with when you're walking around out there. You have no idea. And now, especially like you just don't know. Everybody is sensitive to something that's going on. There's some piece of our culture touched by this pandemic, no matter who you are, what walk of life you come from, or what industry that you work in. So it's
right.
really important now of all times, not just to try to be positive, but to express humanity wherever you can, and remember that we're all a member of the human race. We've got to figure out how to get in the middle somehow and work through this thing, because there's no discrimination from a pandemic. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
It's been really rewarding. I've worked for, I guess, the last 15 years or so with the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance.
Yeah.
And an organization that's very, very near and dear to my heart. And there's a great program called No Kid Hungry. And we do a lot of fundraising to address food insecurity among children. And I know Scott McGee is one as well, and several other of my buddies are volunteer chefs. And we go in and teach cooking classes for kids and adults or families. I taught the first Spanish language class. We do it in churches and libraries, gymnasiums, anywhere where we can kind of set up a kitchen. And there's a great curriculum, and it basically teaches people how to cook food, nutritious food,
Right.
on a budget. Mm-hmm. And one of the classes is even actually at a grocery store. So you learn how to shop.
Oh, and budget. And
budget,
it's so hard
and
to
read
keep
labels.
Things. And what vegetables, I always thought you could buy groceries 2 weeks in advance. No big deal. But so many things perish along the way. It's taken me all these years to figure out how to cook for my family. And
so we're obviously not doing those
Right.
sorts of things right now, but through the Alliance, we're still raising money and working with the food banks and addressing food insecurity. There's one big event that we do every year called Serving Up Solutions, and I think this was year 15, and I think I participated in all except for one. So this year we had to have sort of a virtual fundraiser. So
Right.
we usually the restaurants would donate. Well, nobody's asking restaurants to donate anything right now. I mean, if they are, they're crazy. But they're not. But so the Alliance put me in charge of getting restaurants to prepare 30 to 40 meals, 3 to 4 course meals. They paid us to do that. Mm-hmm. And then in the past, the legislators acted as the servers. So the legislators came, local, and distributed the food, and there was sort of a virtual concert. And I mean, they raised, I think, about 2/3 as much as they normally would.
Wow.
But it kept me in business. It kept, it's just the whole fundraising aspect, and dinners and auctions and things have morphed into these virtual events that actually can work.
Well, and I was just thinking right now when you said that if you want to virtually teach me how to make that salad over there that's famous at Trios, I will pay admission for that.
Well, one fun thing that I'd not done before, and this was not my idea, a couple of weeks ago, I know we're not going to talk about politics, but a friend who's running for an office, he had a sort of a Zoom event. And Kathy Webb, who I call my work wife, who is the executive director of the Hunger Relief Alliance and serves on the board with me, and who's the one that talked me into this, running for city
Right.
council. So I hate her sometimes, and I love her, but sometimes I'm like, what in the hell did you get me into?
Hey, a good friend will push you.
But we did a Zoom event for our friend, and she was in her kitchen, and she prepared something from her restaurant that's not open anymore, Lily's Dim Sum. I don't know if you remember that. And then I prepared something from Trios, and then if you got a certain amount of money, you also got a little dessert sampler delivered to you. But, I mean, it worked. I mean, he raised $8,000 for just
Yeah.
people. We shared recipes and made things that people love from our restaurants.
That's incredible. I mean, sign me up, because what I need is I have a 13-year-old who has shown interest in the kitchen, but he needs step-by-step instructions and supervision. And I can try to do that, but I also have a 4-month-old. So maybe if I could just set him up and you could just FaceTime in and I can pay for you to teach him how to cook. There we go. We'll do a cooking class.
Nobody ever imagined we would be doing things this way, but people are very creative.
It's
and
been
it's just,
kind of inspiring, don't you think?
I think it's very inspirational. It just shows how resilient we can be if we just start thinking outside the box.
Yeah, and working together and taking care of each other, and that's the main thing. And I always tell, my son, we were talking about the other day, what is your purpose in life, and what am I supposed to be doing? And he's at that age, and I'm.
If somebody asked me my purpose in life when I was 13,
no, yeah, he's kind of walking around going like, what's the world all about? And I said, well, what are you passionate about? What do you want to follow? And he always, the way he spends his time and the way he devotes himself to things, I wish that we could do. But we grow up and we forget about all those things that bring us joy, and we go towards the things that bring us money and security and all of those things. And what I admire about him is that in this whole situation, what he's just turned to is the thing that he loves the most, and he's found a way to do it. He can connect with his friends online. He can play games a different way. He can do things, and he's not even thinking about it in a now I have to do it this way. He's like, look what I figured out. And I think if we can all kind of look at it that way, it'll just change the whole thing for us.
I agree. Yeah.
So pivoting has been difficult, but we're so thankful that Trios has managed to push through this difficult time. Your community loves you. I know from experience that I used to work in the building. I would go down there and eat a lot. So appreciate the amazing food you make. I also went to a realtor open house recently, and thank goodness they had Trios catered. So we went in and ate fruit and sandwiches, and just the all of us together, even though we were masked and we were socially distanced, we were still enjoying our time together over food. And so we appreciate the atmosphere that your food can bring to any event.
Thank you. We can still make it sort of intimate. We've come up with these, rather than platters of food, which is not really the way you want to go, little snack boxes and everything sort of self-contained. I mean, there's a way to do it. It seems sort of impersonal, and if you look at it through a particular lens, but it can still be intimate. I mean, I think that's breaking bread and sharing food, and whether you're in our dining room, which, believe me, I'd much rather you be in your dining room than eating out of a to-go box in your office or at home. But I mean, that's just the way it is now.
Right.
But it's still it's a connection that's important.
Yeah. Well, we're thankful for your position in the city as well, and thank you for all the work you do for your community. We appreciate you being on the show, but we also want to have you back, hopefully in the future, and see what is going on in your ward and also what's going on there with Trios. And of course, if you're a listener of the show and haven't been to Trios, get out there. We don't know what you're thinking. Get over there and get some pickup, take it home to your family, and check it out. So
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cappy, for being on the show.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Little Rock. Another episode of The Block Talk. We're out.